Some years ago, I was preaching about generosity. I was talking about gifts and gift giving. And in that particular homily, I kept referring to a free gift. A free gift. I was talking about Jesus. I was talking about Jesus as God's free gift of God's self. My mother was listening to this homily, carefully as it turns out. And you should know, she's here, she's right there. My mother taught English for what, 100, 200 years? How old am I? I'm such a bad son. And it's Christmas. No. My mother was an English teacher, and she said, why? Later after the homily, she said to me, why did you keep referring to a free gift? Talking about a gift is free. And I said, because it's a gift, and it requires no reciprocation. You don't have to give anything in return for it. Therefore, it's a free gift. And my mother said, but all gifts are free. All gifts are free. By definition. I know, she's right there. Hello, Merry Christmas. All gifts are free. And I said, well, that's true. By definition, all gifts are free. And so if we talk about the revelation of God in Jesus Christ as a gift, it's not necessary to say that the gift of God's self in Jesus Christ is a free gift. Evidently, that's redundant. But did anybody here ever watch The Big Bang Theory? A couple of folks willing to raise their hands. Sheldon Cooper, I think, gives a wonderful illustration in that television show of the cultural reality of gift giving. And maybe you didn't watch The Big Bang Theory. Maybe you watched Frasier. Anybody watch the great TV show? If you have, it's one. Anyway, the same thing happens. And so we know, because I studied English as an undergraduate at the University of Delaware, I know the definition of a gift, that it is by definition free. But if we're listening to a cultural message, I mean, Sheldon Cooper, you can't give him a gift. Why not? Because then he feels that, right, he understands gift giving as an implied cultural responsibility. The idea that if someone gives me a gift, I am now obligated to respond in kind. And there's a wonderful Frasier episode, the same thing. The same message gets played out between the dad and the English Daphne, whatever her role was. The same thing. They can't accept gifts from one another because of this implied responsibility. You give me a gift, now I'm obligated to give you something in return. And so the word gift may mean, by definition, the Oxford English Dictionary, as free, but that's not really the cultural practice, is it? And I can tell you this, as a minister in the church, when we'll have a member of the congregation or a member of the community, one of our neighbors, will be home in a full body cast, right, strapped to their bed, and the priest comes, Celeste and me, we come to do our pastoral gig, and we say, what can we do to help you? And what's the response we get? Nothing, no thank you, I'm fine. Right, and we just hear it through a little mouth hole in all the plaster. I don't need anything. And again, why? Because this idea that, well, if somebody brings me a casserole, if somebody makes a run to the Walgreens for me, something like this, then is it a sign of weakness? Is it weakness? Am I now dependent on other people to survive? Which, the short answer to that question, by the way, is Yes. We are all dependent on so many people, not just to survive, but to flourish and to thrive in this life. So there's that, I think. That's part of it. But then there's also this sense that if I accept this gift, I have to do something in return. Have to do something in return. And I think because of that cultural reality is why I got in the habit of speaking about a free gift to distinguish it from gift giving with this implied reciprocity. Now think about this for a minute. It's Christmas. Yay, it's Christmas. It's awesome. I love Christmas, right? And we say, right, like maybe I'll call up my mother and my sister who's here. When are we going to exchange gifts? Exchange gifts. In other words, if I show up at your house on Christmas with a present for you, what do you got for me? Right? I can be the passive-aggressive martyr. I can play that role. Oh, don't worry. There really wasn't anything on my Christmas list that I really wanted this year. All I really wanted this year is peace on earth and goodbye. No. Where's my stuff? I don't have a present for you, by the way. You are so burned because I do have a present for you this year. That, by the way, is my older sister. We're having fun. But you see, I think by now, hopefully, you've got my point, that that gift giving sometimes can be complicated. It can be complicated. What are the expectations? What's our understanding? How does it work? Well, the gift we receive at Christmas, whether we're fans of The Big Bang Theory or Frasier, whether we've bought into that cultural idea that gift giving requires a reciprocal gift of equal or like value. If we've bought into that, then we're really at a loss this Christmas season. Because in the history of the world, if there ever was a gift to humanity, a gift to you and me, for which there's nothing we can give in return. There's nothing we can give in return. There's only one way to receive the gift of the revelation of God in Jesus Christ, and that is freely. Understanding that the revelation of God in Jesus Christ is something that God does for us, gives to us. And what does God do for us? What does God give to us? But the fullness of God's self. The fullness of God's self, born as this infant, this night, this infant, born into the world in this remote part of the world, in this remote time, at least remote to us now here in the 21st century. This child born into the world completely dependent upon its parents and its community for its survival. This is God incarnate, God enfleshed, God born into the world in the person of Jesus Christ. And this is the Christmas gift. It's not a pony, it's not a bike, it's not a motorboat, or whatever's on your Christmas list. That's my Christmas list. And I'm really hoping for the pony this year. It's what God gives us. It's what God gives us. It's what God offers us. What does God offer us? God's self. Who God is. Now enfleshed, incarnate, born as Jesus of Nazareth. Born as this human person. And the thing about gifts is, what's so wonderful, I think, about gifts. So my wife and I were talking about this today. We were wrapping a couple of presents this afternoon, and I looked at a couple of the gifts that we have, and they're, right, sometimes you get like the misshapen gift, right? You're like, how on earth are we going to wrap this? And I said, let's just put it in a Christmas bag. Just put it in a bag. We'll drop some tissue paper on top of it. It's wrapped. Well, no. And my wife was quite right about this. She's like, no, we're going to wrap this. We're going to wrap it because we love to unwrap our presents, don't we? Am I alone in wanting to unwrap my presents? It's fun, Johan. That's exactly right. To open the presents. But here's the way that we receive the gift of Jesus. Just because he comes wrapped in bands of cloth doesn't mean the way we receive him is to, right? Unwrap him. No. Leave Jesus wrapped in his bands of cloth. The way to receive the gift that God gives us on Christmas, the gift of God's self on Christmas, what we have to unwrap, what we have to open is ourselves, our hearts, our souls, our spirits, our very selves. We have to open and say, yes, Lord. Open our hearts and say, yes, Lord. Yes, thank you. There's nothing I can do to pay you back. There's no gift that I can give you of equal or greater value than the gift of yourself. And the way to receive the gift of the Lord is with an open heart. To open our heart to receive this revelation of God, to receive the fullness of God, because this is the hope. God coming into the world, hoping that that's exactly what we will do. Just say yes. Say yes and receive the gift. Receive the gift of God, the gift of grace, the gift of love, the gift of blessing and salvation. All that comes with the child for you and for me. And we can't earn it, and we don't deserve it, and we can't buy it, and we can't negotiate for it. And the only thing we can give in return is to say yes and thank you. Yes, Lord, and thank you. And finally, I want to invite you to think about your own lives for a minute, and to think about what really are the greatest gifts that fill our lives. When it comes right down to it, what are the greatest gifts that fill our lives? God comes as the person Jesus Christ, comes as a person. And I wonder if we're honest for us, how many of the greatest gifts in our lives are other people? Now, I'm on thin ice, lest I begin to sound like my grandmother, not my mother, my grandmother, who always used to say, and I would roll my eyes as rollingly as I possibly could, for Christmas, all I want is to see you. That's all, right? Just see you. I don't need any gifts. I don't need any stuff. And I was like, wow, you're old. Because there's so much great stuff out there. Are you kidding me? I'm going to come see you anyway, right? But it's taken me a little while now to understand that far and away, the greatest gifts in my life are people whom I know. Family, friends, people who I serve and worship with here at St. Anne's, so many of you. And there's like a little collection right there. My sister, my mother, my wife, my daughter, and Celeste, the other priest here. I'd be lost without you. I'd be lost without you. My son up in the booth. And the St. Anne's community. And this is the gift we celebrate this Christmas. The gift of greater value than anything else we may receive this Christmas. If we now, this night, understanding that the gift that God offers us is the gift of God's self, the fullness of God's self, the fullness of God, the fullness of grace, the fullness of love, the fullness of blessing. And it's ours. It's ours. It's ours. And all we have to do is open our hearts, receive the gift with our amen, our yes, our amen. Will now someone please say amen?